Hear the word of the Lord. John 4:5-42. So he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well, and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I give them will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming back here to draw water." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come back." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." And Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying you have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, this hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father who seeks such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. And when he comes, he will proclaim all things to us." And Jesus said to her, "I am he, the one who is speaking to you." And just then his disciples came. They were astonished that he was speaking with a woman. But no one said, "What do you want?" or "Why are you speaking with her?" Then the woman left her water jar and went back to the city. She said to the people, "Come and see a man who told me everything that I have ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he?" And they left the city and were on their way to him. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, "Rabbi, eat something." But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you do not know about." So the disciples said to one another, "Surely no one has brought him something to eat." Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who has sent me and to complete his work. Do you not say, 4 months more, and then comes the harvest? But I tell you, look around you and see now the fields are ripe for harvesting. The reaper is ready, receiving wages and gathering fruit for the eternal life, so that sower and reaper may rejoice together. For here the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor." Many Samaritans from the city believe in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything that I've ever done." So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there for 2 days, and many more believed because of his word. And they said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard ourselves, and we know that this is truly the Savior of the world."
Thank you, Shannon, for the reading today. It's a rather long reading, but very important reading and a good reading. So I asked Shannon to read, so hopefully you would enjoy her voice. I do when she reads. She has a radio voice. That's good. I brought pictures today because we're talking about water, and I can't help it. I come from the Little River in the Great Smoky Mountains. Some of you have seen the Little River. Some of you have gone there on vacation. Some of you have gone there with me, and you've seen the Little River. It flows through my home county of Blount County. I put a few facts in the bulletin for you. It's actually 60 miles long. And 18 of those miles flow through the boundaries of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and then it flows out of the park into Blount County. The source of the river is Mount Collins inside the park, and the mouth of the river is at the county line of Blount and Knox County, where it used to meet up with the Tennessee River before the TVA dam projects, and now it meets up with Fort Loudon Lake, which is right there where the Tennessee River was. The current still exists under the surface of the lake. So I brought some pictures. Shannon and I took a hike once to try to trace the little river back up to its source, and we never made it all the way to Mount Collins, but we got further up the little river than I've ever been. You need to know that I've tubed in this river in the mountains, but down in Blount County, it doesn't look like that. It's a big lazy river where my grandfather used to take me fishing and squirrel hunting all along the riverbanks. But we went up, let's see, put the next one up. We went up looking for the source of the river, and you see more rocks and more rocks. Evidently, people have made a habit out of dumping rocks into the river. You got another picture. I wanted to help them out, so I got busy and helped throw a rock in the river. If I had the other shot, you'd see the rock down there in the bottom of the river. Don't think for a minute I didn't get that rock to move. Right, Shannon? Right, Shannon? Right? Right, yes. By the way, I have a picture of you too, Shannon, right here. She's enjoying her walk on the river. You know, Shannon's a tree hugger, right? Everyone that knows her knows that she's a tree hugger. So, well, that's not quite the tree hugging picture I had in mind. But there you go, Shannon the tree hugger. Yeah, I'm not jealous. And then the other picture was just because people make little monuments, we'd take pictures of their rock monuments. I don't know who made that one, but it lives forever in my iPhoto program. So whoever made it, I hope, is aware of that. The people in the Cherokee Nation used to say that the waters in those mountains had healing power in them. And I almost believe them. One day when my back was hurting, I sat down on a rock, which was very cold, and then put my feet down in the water, which was very cold. And somewhere in all that cold and stinging, I seemed to forget my back was hurting. So they may be right. But the Cherokee always believed in the healing power, not only of the Little River, but the Oconaluftee, the Bradley Fork, the Middle Prong, all of the rivers that run through those mountains. They're very pristine. They're very clean. You can drink from them. They say not to. They say purify the water unless you live there. And if you live in those mountains, you can drink from the rivers there. When I first moved here to Texas in 1975, one of the first things I noticed was how undrinkable the water was. I'm talking sink water, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. We drink sink water at my house, okay? We're okay. But when I first moved here, I could taste dirt in the water. I don't know if it was really there or not, but I could taste it. So Mama used to put the water in the refrigerator. We didn't have a filter, and they didn't bottle water back then, and so we didn't pay $1 a bottle for it. We bought it like everyone from the water department, and we'd put it in the refrigerator and got it cold. We boiled it. We did everything we could to make it drinkable. But in time, I got used to it. When I was traveling one time, though, and I got up in the middle of the night in Odessa to take a couple of ibuprofen, and I forgot where I was, and I didn't grab a bottle of water. I went to the sink, and I got a big glass of Odessa water, and I woke everybody in the room up with me because I was spitting water and gagging for a few minutes. It was at least 30 weight, which is good if you live in Odessa. That's how people make money. But when you're traveling, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to have a bottle of water with you. You know the rule. When you're out of town, don't drink the water. I drink Ozarka. I don't know what you drink, and this is not an ad. You don't have to buy Ozarka. Buy Nestle. They're the people who make it, okay? By the way, today's sermon is about streams of living water that never run out. And I went to my little fridge in the back to get a bottle of water today, and there is none. And then I went out to my car to get a bottle of Ozarka to share with you. And as you can see, it's pretty dry too. So I don't know what has happened to my sermon, but our streams of living water have run out. You better save it, brother. Don't drink it all. Someone in here may need a drink. I'll throw myself on my sword for you, okay? I can't read even with my glasses on. But the reason I drink this is because I think that I can taste it and it's different. I don't know if it's true or not. And I believe them when they say on the label that every bottle of Ozarka water comes from one of 3 springs in South Texas. Not in Arkansas, not in the Ozark Mountains, but it's somewhere in South Texas. There are 3 natural springs from which they claim to bottle this water. And they've got me. I'm hooked. I buy them. I drink them. So when you're in Mexico, drink Ozarka. I'm sure they get it. It's from South Texas, right? It reminds me of a story one time when Larry Norman was doing one of those coffee house concerts, you know, in the 70s or 80s or 90s. It must have been in the 90s, because he was drinking a bottle of Evian water, and he was reading water from the Swiss Alps, bottled in France. And he's like, how does that work? Water runs down from the Swiss Alps into some guy's backyard in France. And then he bottles it and sells it to me for $2, because if Ozark is $1, Evian is $2, right? And then he says, isn't it interesting that Evian spelled backwards is naive? That's just a story for people who can spell, is all it is. It didn't mean anything by it. And I'm not selling water today. Although invest in water, I hear it might be the place to get your return in the future. So, but you know what? This reading really isn't about water. It's really about wells. We've been playing with words during Lent, and you know, it's having an interesting effect. I really believe that it is, and I'm going to have to stop using that word now because it's Sunday, and the new word for this week is... Thank you. You got it already. You're going to have to be creative with serve. It could be used a lot of different ways. So as you use the word, look for those positive meanings and do what I'm doing. If you're like me, it's happening. Every day I catch myself in the negative conversation. And I've been blaming other people for drawing me into it, but I'm going to tell you the truth. More this week, I've caught myself starting the conversation than being drawn into it. I am evidently more hooked than I thought I was. So when you do that, and I know you're doing it because there's been a handful of y'all came to me after the first week and said something like, I don't like this, but we'll just keep going. Just simply look for it and just drop out. There's no need to judge or grade yourself or anyone else. Just drop out of that conversation and start a new one. The words I want to teach you today from this text are 2 words that are interpreted as the word well, okay? The first word is, I'm going to let you help me. See, I always get in trouble for speaking redneck Greek. So I'm going to get a bunch of y'all to help me, and then it's not going to be all on me. So I gave you the pronunciation in the parentheses there. Who would be brave enough to attempt that? Not Scott. Freyar? Or okay. Freyar? Freyar? See where the... Yeah. Are we right, or do you even know Scott? Scott's like, I don't speak Greek. I know a little Spanish, but we're okay? We're all right then. Freyar. The word is translated as well, or it can also be translated as pit or cistern. So oftentimes if you see the word pit in the Bible, it may be this word here, Freyar. And when we see the word well in this text, it's Freyar. But something interesting happens around the 14th verse. Jesus is talking to this woman by a well which was dug by their ancestors. And by the way, If you have a concordance, look up the word well and find out how many places in the first 5 books of the Bible it's mentioned, because it is a reoccurring word and a reoccurring practice in the Old Testament. That those people would dig wells not just for water for themselves, but wells would be used to describe a treaty between two peoples. Abraham shared a well with the Arab peoples around him as a peace treaty. Or sometimes the well is describing what's happening at this scene, whether people are quarreling or whether they are moving into a space that is blessed by God. And so wells represent a great deal of theology and blessing in the Old Testament. And Jesus comes to this woman who is sitting beside one of these wells. By the way, no one else is here. You get this, right? When the reading started, it said the disciples had left to go to town. Jesus is pretty much alone at this historic place with this woman. And as they talk about water from the well, as Jesus asks her for a drink, when they move to the 14th verse and she's quizzing him about why you want a drink from me, Jesus invites her to tap into a source within herself that he has brought to offer her. In the 14th verse, it's a different word. Who wants to try that one? Yeah, you got to move the accent. It didn't get there. It's on the last side. So pagay, or pagay, however you want to say that. But the accent is on the end. And this word means a source or a supply. Or another way to say it is a fountain. You get that? It looks a little different. In other words, as Jesus moves the woman toward this definition of the word, he literally calls the well from which they are drinking a cistern. Even though they're drawing clean water from this well, compared to the well of living water from within us, the water that we draw from our taps or drink from our favorite bottles, Jesus might say, comparatively is like a cistern. Okay? Now, if you're like me, this is the part where I get pretty confused. Lots of confusing things happen in the Bible. I don't see water gushing up out of this woman or Jesus. I can preach this forever, but I've never seen water gushing up out of any of us, at least not in a good way. What in the world is Jesus talking about? Well, we're not talking about water. And we're talking about wells, but they're pointing us towards something else. You see, Jesus is talking about life. He doesn't call it any water. He calls it living water. Zoe is the word. Life, a lifetime. Jesus is trying to tap into a source of life that is inside this woman. Remember 2 weeks ago when we started Lent and we were experiencing this text about Jesus having these temptations from the devil? And I told you then, for a progressive Christian, it is no longer good enough to say the devil is something out there. We must recognize that what that text means is that whenever we embark on our journey, we can expect temptation to well up from within us. And so now Jesus is turning around this whole idea that not only does temptation well up from inside, but inside you, where temptation comes from, is also the very unending source of life eternal. Like a spring or a fountain. A supply of life, not just water, but life that will never run out. If you came to this text looking for free water for the rest of your life, it's not going to happen. But that's not what we want anyway. What we're all looking for is a better life. A way to understand our life and our context. To be free of the things that cause us anxiety or fear or doubt in our lives. And this is what Jesus is waking up in this woman. Notice that Jesus comes bringing her something. The gift of life. But he starts off by doing what? Asking her for something. Now, this is not just any request. When I tell you that he was a Jew and she was a Samaritan, you're struggling to understand exactly what that means. So I could say to you, think about the struggle in America with race wars. And so there is a free black man by the well and a white man, perhaps even maybe with a southern accent, I'll own that, asks him for a drink of water. A free black man. But you know what? Even that fails. I've preached that before. Here's one. A flaming gay man is sitting by the well when a Bible-thumping, fundamental preacher comes up and says, "Give me a drink." You know what this woman is saying? You're a Jew? And you would ask me for a drink? Here was an interpretation that I made of that first part of that passage years ago. Jesus asks, "Will you give me a drink?" And this woman says, "You've got to be kidding. Are you picking at me? Asking me for a drink? Aren't you too clean to drink after a dirty Samaritan woman like myself? Either you're just rubbing it in, or you're so thirsty that you'd take water even from me. After all, no one is watching, right?" But Jesus says, when you look at me, you see a Jew. If you could see me for who I am in God. If you knew what God was up to, Jew or otherwise, you would ask me for a supply of water from within that never runs out. A Samaritan asked to serve a Jew. I don't know what that represents for you. I'm not going to worry about you. I got plenty of my own work to do in the next week. I don't know who God is going to send into my path to serve, but I'm going to watch for it to be someone that I really don't even want to talk to or look at. That's usually the way it happens. I assume it is for my growth and not just God's own amusement. But either is fine with me. But either way, I want you to get a point here. To be the receiver of this gift, you have to first give up. You have to be willing to reach out beyond your comfort zones and to give yourself to that person that you don't like. And you know what? Who's standing in front of the woman? God, who will come to me this week as someone or something that I just didn't want to deal with. I pray that you will all be the receiver this week of a source of life so abundant that it never runs out. I pray that you will recognize that its source is within you, not somewhere out there. And I pray that you never hesitate to pour it out upon all who come asking for a drink. May God bless us as we serve this week during Lent. Will you pray with me?